There's two ways that I use business astrology. The first is looking at your natal chart or your birth chart and diving into what it tells you about your most aligned business. The second stage is really understanding that once you have a business, that your business has its own chart and it has its own energy. It can be so much more successful in our businesses when we understand the unique energy of our business. If you're planning something important, whether it's launching a business or launching a new product or offering, make sure that you're not doing it during Mercury, Venus, or Mars retrograde periods. Waning phases are better for reflection, rest, recovery, whereas waxing phases are better for more masculine activities, more outward focus, active activities. If you're really wanting to be really visible and seen, then like a Leo moon might be a great moon to launch something under. A lot of what I work with women around is that fear of visibility, and often I can tie it back to someone's rising sign. So they've been, as a child, talked down for their rising sign trait. We have the North Node in our astrology chart. The North Node is the point of soul purpose in our chart. We all have a life purpose, and what a waste it is that if we don't discover what that is and we don't live it. Worse than, I guess, not having the business that you want is having a business that's not designed properly for you and hating it because you're doing things that are totally misaligned.
Welcome to Mind, Body and Soul Conversations podcast, where each episode I sit down with authors, experts and practitioners in the fields of spirituality, personal growth and holistic healing. Today's guest is the amazing Kathryn Hocking, an expert business astrologer and business coach. She's the founder of the world's first Business Astrology Academy and author of the Business Astrology Oracle Deck, published by Hay House. Today she explains how we can harness the power of astrology to build a soul-aligned business and gives us key tips to make sure our business succeeds and thrives with the support of astrology. We will learn how to work with the moon cycles to launch and plan our business events, how to discover if we are aligned with our soul purpose, and so much more. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kathryn. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
So I would like to talk about your wonderful Oracle deck, the Business Astrology Oracle Deck, which I absolutely love. But perhaps we should start first with understanding what is business astrology and how was it created?
Yeah, so business astrology is a specific niche topic within astrology. It has been covered to some extent in the past, but no one has really, I guess, in detail gotten it down on paper in terms of writing books on it or creating decks on it like I did. When I looked around a number of years ago, there weren't any training programs specifically on it. So there's definitely a lot of astrologers that do use astrology to inform their business, but it wasn't a formalized niche within astrology. And so when I started out studying astrology, I was already a business coach. And so my mind immediately went to, well, how do I use this in my business? And when I started researching, I couldn't find any information, any training courses, any books on it. And I guess I took that as a sign that that's what I was meant to do, that I was already a business coach, that I had years in business already, I love astrology, that it was my calling to bring the two together. So there's two ways that I use business astrology. The first is looking at your natal chart or your birth chart and diving into what it tells you about your most aligned business, the types of business you'd be suited to, the types of industries, niche, the way that you best take action, the way that you best communicate, a whole lot of different things based on your natal chart. So that's the first stage that I take my students through. It's understanding their natal chart in relation to business. The second stage is really understanding that once you have a business, that your business has its own chart and it has its own energy, has its own purpose, what it's meant to do, be, and achieve. And as business owners, we are like the custodians of that. We're the stewards of that. but it's more than just us, and that we can be so much more successful in our businesses when we understand the unique energy of our business, and then we become really like, yeah, a steward of that energy, a facilitator of that energy, rather than having to source all of the energy from ourselves. So they're really the two things that I do. So within that, I guess, second level of business astrology, we start to look at your business chart to understand, what does the business want to do? What are the business's most aligned offerings? What's the business aligned branding? Who is its sole clients? When are the best times to launch different things? So we can do so many things using business astrology, and that's really what I teach through my certification.
And how do you calculate the your business astrology chart?
Yeah, so this is a bit of a tricky one, and one I had to kind of feel into myself when I was developing my methodology. And the conclusion I came to was that, unlike with an actual birth, where within a couple of minutes we're going to be pretty accurate, of the birth time, hospitals are very much used to writing it down as soon as the baby is officially out. Businesses are different when we don't always record the time. And when a business feels real can vary. It's not always the same activity that is energetically the start of someone's business. So, some astrologers might say it's when you register a business name, but that process is different depending on what country in the world you're in, how involved it is, what you have to do. So I really believe that it is more about the business owner tuning into energetically, when did my business feel real? When did it feel like it had been born? And that can vary. For some people, they get an idea in the middle of the night and they just know they're going to create a business around it, and that's like the business's birth. For other people, it doesn't feel real until they get their first paying client or until their website goes live. So it really does vary from business to business as to what that timing is. I do encourage my clients to try and pick a time that they can actually narrow down to the minute. So we're looking for really some sort of digital timestamp related to an activity. But sometimes it is more of a best guess timing. They know it was in the middle of the night, but they don't know the exact time. So it varies a little bit.
Yeah, even for with our birth chart. For example, I don't know for sure, like the minutes of when I was born. My mom says it was at 10 o'clock in the night, but I'm not really sure if it was precisely at 10. So
Yeah.
I do my astrology chart based on what my mum says. It was 10 o'clock in the night. So it makes sense as well. And it's really interesting because I've done mine with the help of your Business Astrology Oracle Deck, which again, I find it so useful, especially to understand astrology, because I feel like it's very difficult, it's so complex. And I did do yours. I did actually both my birth chart and my business astrology chart, and with the help of the cards, because I feel like it's easier to have a visual aid.
Yeah.
With the cards. So I do want to talk about your cards for a minute. So what was the intention behind the deck, and how can people use it?
Yeah, so I guess I can remember about it. I've been in business for about 14 years now, and I can remember within a year of starting my business, I had seen Oracle decks, and I remember thinking back then I would love to create something like that for my own business. And it just kind of hung around as this thing that I would like to do at some point in the future. And I thought about it on and off, but I never really had the right concept or idea that I wanted to move forward with. And then as I started creating my courses on business astrology and teaching my students, I realized that, like you said, I realized that a visual aid for learning business astrology could be so helpful to them. And I was already recommending that they buy a more generic astrology oracle deck, because just by picking a card each day, it would reinforce, the zodiac archetype or the house or the planet archetype. So I was already recommending they do that. And I thought, well, how amazing would it be to have one that was business astrology specific to really help them embed my methodology? And so it really started as a learning tool for my students. And, I asked them, is this something that you would be interested in? And had great feedback. And then as I self-published it to begin with, I launched it and there was a lot of interest in it from people on my list, but also just more broadly. And so it kind of moved from being just like a learning tool for my students into being something that really could be helpful to any entrepreneur, anyone who has a business. So it has multiple uses. You can use it as a learning tool to learn business astrology. You can use it to help you really tune in visually to the placements in your business chart, which again, if you're a really visual person, I find just like if you have a placement in your chart, let's say, so in my chart, I have Venus in Cancer in the 12th house in my business chart. So you could pull the Venus card, the Cancer card, and the 12th house card, and then look at them together and really tune into, well, what is that energy together? Like, what might this look like integrated and combined? So it's become a visual tool to help people learn more about their placements. And honestly, I just keep coming up with different ways to use it. Like I've used it on retreats, doing different, like more experiential astrology activities. I've used it for looking at blocks and limiting beliefs in your business. Like I just keep coming up with more and more ways that we can use it. But it can also just be used as the same way you would use an oracle deck or a tarot deck, just to pull a card each day, get some inspiration. But what I love about it is it's business focused, and there's not very many decks out there, surprisingly, that are really laser focused on like creative entrepreneurs like us, that we're not necessarily running like conglomerates, but we are working in our business every day, and we can really do with having business focused inspiration and guidance and support. So that was another thing I really wanted to do, was I wanted to make it absolutely focused to people running their own business.
Yeah, and it's amazing actually. It's so unique. I haven't, like you said, I haven't seen anything like it. So I was really happy to purchase it and use it as well. So thank you so much for that. And so what are some simple techniques that we can use when planning our business activities, like launching a business or a product, that we can start using, some like advices that we can start using today? Some simple
Yes, I
things
mean,
maybe.
with astrology, you can either go really simple or it can be really complex. And like I teach astro planning and astro launching at quite a complex level, but we can start with some really basic things. They might not feel basic if you're brand new to astrology, but they are on the more basic side. So in particular, just making sure if you're planning something important, whether it's launching a business or launching a new product or offering, make sure that you're not doing it during Mercury, Venus, or Mars retrograde periods. So retrogrades are when the planet appears to be moving backwards in the sky, and they tend to impact things relating to business. So with Mars, it will mean that things just don't move forward the way that you'd like them to. It can feel quite stuck and stagnant, like really hard work. That's not the energy you want to launch something under. With Venus, it can impact money and receptivity and attracting clients. Again, you wouldn't want to launch a business or an offering under under Venus retrograde. Now, of course, if you have created a business under Venus retrograde, there are ways to work with it. But if you could choose whether or not to, I would avoid it. And Mercury retrograde, probably the most common one, because we have Mercury retrogrades around 3 times a year. That impacts things like technology, sales, commerce, communications. So those are retrogrades we want to try and avoid. And so you can actually just Google like retrograde calculators, and you can actually find out when those planets are going to be retrograde so that you can avoid those dates. The other thing that's really easy to start working with, and I often call like lunar astrology is like the gateway astrology drug. Like I find like women, I think people get introduced to moon cycles before they're necessarily introduced to full-on astrology. And so you may be aware of things like new moons and full moons, waxing and waning phases. Well, in business, we want to be doing important activities when the moon is in a waxing phase. So it's in a waxing phase for half of its cycle, so about 14 days out of every 28 days. And that's when the energy is growing and building. So we want to be launching things when the energy is growing and building rather than diminishing. Waning phases are better for reflection, rest, recovery, whereas waxing phases are better for more masculine activities, more outward focused active activities. So definitely looking at the dates that you're thinking about and making sure the moon is waxing is really good. And then you can also look at what sign is the moon in. So if you understand the zodiac archetypes, which of course my deck can help with, or any astrology deck can help with, you can actually look at, well, what moon sign would be really supportive for this activity. So, if you're really wanting to be really visible and seen, then like a Leo moon might be a great moon to launch something under. If it's a health-related offering, you might choose a Virgo moon, which rules the 6th house of day-to-day health and routine. So it really just depends on like what it is that you're launching, what sort of outcomes you're looking for. And then you can, match your dates up with the moon signs as well. So they're just a few of the simpler techniques. Of course, I go a lot more detailed when I teach students, but you can start with some more simple things like that.
And it does make sense because obviously everything in nature is cyclical. And so we are too, and our business is an energy as well, so that we are creating and putting out there. So it makes sense. And even following the moon cycles, I feel like it's almost like giving us permission to also find that balance, because it gives us, okay, this is probably the time to do things. This is the time to start reflecting or taking time to recharge and rest. And I feel like, especially I've noticed that when I haven't achieved, or I feel like I haven't achieved a certain goal, like I feel like I have to hustle until I get there, and I haven't earned that time to rest or recharge. And following the moon cycles is a way for us to, this is our way to find that balance and force us to follow that guidance as well from our nature as well.
Yeah, women are so cyclical. We have menstrual cycles that really influence our energy. We're very much humans are influenced by the moon anyway, but women in particular. And if we try and just keep going full pelt, for extended long-term periods, we will burn out. And it's much harder to recover from burnout. Someone who's speaking from experience, because I've ended up there at different times for, various reasons. It's a lot harder to recover from serious burnout than it is to just actually go a bit slower all of the time. And what it really does is it gives us permission to, go a bit harder for, up to 2 weeks. So you might focus on a launch or something like that for a 2-week period, but any more than that is actually going to be too much. And that's where burnout and getting sick and issues like that come into play. So it's really a permission slip to take the time to fill up our cup, to reflect, to, allow, like I also believe that like our intuition doesn't get activated when we're stressed or when we're hustling. It gets activated when we're still and when we're able to reflect. So it's a really powerful thing to embrace in your business.
Yeah. And you like you mentioned, you work with women, you focus on women, right? And as a business astrologer and a business coach, what are the biggest challenges you see women having, especially in the soulful-led business world?
Yeah, so there's so many different challenges or limiting beliefs. I think, there's always the limiting belief that a lot of more spiritually oriented entrepreneurs have around feeling like they don't deserve to get paid for the work that they do, that somehow because it is spiritual, that it is wrong to actually charge appropriately for it. And that is such a damaging belief to have, because the gifts that spiritual people have are so valuable, so helpful to people. But, you know, we need to be compensated for that. And we need to be able to, you know, feed our family and pay our bills and do all the things just like anyone else. So I think that is one of the issues the women I work with often have. It's actually like claiming their right to be remunerated appropriately. We see that in astrology readings all the time, people that really undercharge for the amount of work that an astrology reading actually takes to prepare for and deliver. And I was very intentional when I started my business that I didn't want to go into it in that manner, that it had to feel good for me, as well as providing a great offering to my clients. There's a lot of visibility stuff that comes up for women as well. I think, you know, in a lot of ways, there's a societal conditioning around almost like we say, you know, that old saying, children should be seen and not heard. It's kind of almost a bit similar with women, like men were meant to be the ones going out into the world, being, you know, getting the success and the recognition and being really visible. So women often struggle with visibility. So a lot of what I work with women around is that fear of visibility. And that can also relate back to things, you know, traumas in childhood. It can relate back to, often I can tie it back to someone's rising sign. So they've been, as a child, talked down for their rising sign trait. For example, I'm a Virgo rising, and my mum used to always like tell me to stop trying to organize her and to stop nagging her, you know. And so that was my Virgo wanting to just have everything ordered and planned, but she made me feel like that was a really bad thing. So I repressed it for a while. I've actually realized it is my biggest gift in my business, and it's what my clients love about me. And so I've had to like re-embrace it and reintegrate it. So often that's part of the work that I do with clients, is helping them to really, embrace and integrate their rising sign. You know, there's just so many different things. I work with a lot of spiritual women. Often spiritual women have amazing gifts, but they're not always so good at systems and structure and being grounded. Being a Virgo rising, I'm very good at that. So definitely one of the things I do is really help people break things down step by step and create, you know, efficient systems. But yeah, I mean, there's so many different things that soulful female entrepreneurs need to work through, and we all have to work through them. But sometimes just getting help from someone that's been there before and that understands it can be really helpful.
Yeah. I think fortunately, I think the era of the internet has this good thing of, I think it's starting to allow us to be more expressive and allow us to share our gifts even more, because we can connect with so many people in the world. For example, if I was just limited by my own place where I live, it wouldn't be, I wouldn't be in this area probably. I'm sure I wouldn't.
Oh, me either. You know, I don't think I ever would have had this business before the technology boom. But I do find that a lot of my clients do have a lot of blocks around social media and visibility and stuff like that. I think for spiritual souls, we're often empaths. I'm an empath as well. So we pick up energy really strongly. We feel quite drained often by social media.
Mm-hmm.
Often it's about working out that you don't have to do everything. And it can feel like we have to do so many things in this day and age, because there's so much technology, so many different systems and social media platforms. But it's not about doing everything. It's about finding the most aligned way for you to market in your business, communicate in your business, show up in your business, and just focus on that. It's like, I love being interviewed for podcasts, but I know that I just have no desire to have my own podcast, and that it's just not what fuels my energy. I'm a writer and a teacher, but not so much, like that podcast interviewing type personality. And so it's about knowing yourself and that's a lot of the work that we do, is just really really understanding ourselves, knowing ourselves, loving ourselves, and like embracing what that means, and then finding a way to create the most aligned business based on that.
And really quickly, I would actually, because you're talking about, and one of the things I feel like we struggle so much is finding or understanding what our purpose is. And that's something that I struggled for many years. How can astrology help us discover what our purpose is? And I feel like that's so fascinating. If I found that before, so many years before, I think I would have been, it would have been so much easier for me. But every journey is a journey, and mine was how it was, and I'm grateful for it. But how can astrology help us discover our soul purpose, and if our business is in alignment with it?
Yeah, I mean, it can tell us so much. I have a whole framework that I've developed called Soul Purpose Alchemy, and it's all about the process to actually dive into our soul purpose through astrology. So I actually do a free training on my website where I take people through this process. But effectively, we have the North Node in our astrology chart. The North Node is the point of soul purpose in our chart. And so we can start by looking at the sign our North Node is in and the house it's in to get a sense of how we're meant to live out our soul purpose and in what way. So, for example, my North Node's in Leo in the 11th house. So I'm meant to be creative, meant to be seen and heard, but I'm meant to do it within the realm of community. So my offerings are almost always community-based offerings. I'm teaching and leading groups of people, compared to, I do a little bit of one-on-one work, but that's never been my bread and butter of my income. It's always been group offerings. And so we really see that in that North Node in the 11th house. Everything I do has to be creative for me. It has to fuel my creativity. Otherwise, I get very stagnant, unhappy. And actually, when I started my business, I quit corporate to start my business. The one thing I was like, I just have to do something that feels creative. And that was my Leo North Node kind of like saying, hey, I'm here. Like, can you integrate me into your life? And then we can look at the ruler of the North Node. So because I have a North Node in Leo, Leo is ruled by the sun. So then what I do is I look for the sun in my chart by sign and house, and that gives me even more information. So my sun is in Sagittarius, in the 3rd house of writing, speaking, and teaching. So that really brings the layer of the teacher, the mentor, the guide into my soul purpose. So I know that I need to make sure that I really stay aligned and true with that teacher guide energy. Sometimes I get a bit off track, shiny object syndrome, all of that, but I often have to just pull myself back to, you're a teacher, you're a trainer. What you love to do is create new training and then teach that new training. And that's what helps me to stay really laser focused in my purpose and what I'm here to do.
Yeah. And so for those interested in learning more or even working with you, where can they find you and what resources do you offer?
Sure. So my website is kathrynhocking.com. I have a number of free trainings on the website. So I think in the menu bar, there's just like free resources or something like that. And so I have a number of different free trainings there. We have the one that I mentioned on soul purpose. I have a business astrology basics free training. We have an astrology basics training, which is more about your natal chart. I have a superpower training. I was talking earlier about how often what we need to do is align to our rising sign and work through any of the ways that we've repressed our rising sign. So I've got a training on that. I then run my business astrology certification. So I have 2 levels of that. That is where I spend the majority of my time in my business, is training future business astrologers, which I really love to do. And, I'm multi-passionate. There's lots of other things as well. I do a few readings. I have my astrology deck, of course. I'm working on a book. So there's always something some sort of creative project that I'm working on. But yeah, you can find me at kathrynhocking.com. I also have Instagram at Kathryn_Hocking. That's where I tend to show up most on social media. But yeah, they're kind of the best ways to connect with me.
And I'm actually very, very excited for your book because I feel like it's going to dive even deeper into business astrology, what I've learned from your deck. And I feel like it's going to be amazing. So I can't wait for that for sure.
Yeah, me too. It's often frustrating that traditional publishing, it's quite a long process. But it's
Yeah.
funny, I can remember starting with the Oracle deck and thinking, oh God, that's so long away. And then all of a sudden we were there and we were yeah, publishing. So the time does get away from you, but I'm definitely working on it. And I hope to yeah, hope to get it into people's hands probably in 2026, is when
Oh,
I'm
that's
hoping
great.
that it will get out into the world.
Oh, I'll
And yeah, it's
definitely
going to
be
be
looking.
a really helpful resource. Like yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
going to
going to
be
be a
sharing a lot
guide.
in that book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you for that as well. And finally, can you share a message or advice for those who are looking to begin a soul-aligned business, but are afraid to start, or even have started but are afraid to take a step further, like you said, like being more visible or something like that?
I guess, I've achieved a lot in my business over 14 years, but I've always been scared. I've always had blocks come up. I was super scared about the deck launching. I was scared about getting my first bad Amazon review and it being that visible. Every stage of my journey has come with fears and blocks and limiting beliefs. But what's important is that you decide that, that you want it more than the fear that is there and that you just take the next step. It's just about breaking it down into small little steps. And over time, those add up to really big changes and advancements. And ever since I've been a little girl, I've just been this believer that we all have a life purpose and what a waste it is that if we don't discover what that is and we don't live it. And really, my whole life is really driven around that belief, and that's why I love teaching my soul purpose training to people, because I think everyone should have the opportunity to discover what their soul purpose is, and astrology can give us so many insights into that. So I would recommend people definitely start thinking about what their astrology can tell them about their soul purpose, but also about the best type of business for them, the best type of offerings for them, the best way for them to take action, because the only thing kind of worse than, I guess, not having the business that you want is having a business that's not designed properly for you and hating it because you're doing things that are totally misaligned. And over time, I've learnt it the hard ways a lot of times, but I've learnt over time what an aligned business looks like. And yeah, so much happier when I get to stay in my purpose and really align with what works best for me. So that's all I really want for everyone, and encourage you to go on the journey to start diving into that.
Well, thank you so much. And it's wonderful that you say that because I feel that really deeply. And like I said, if you can reach as many people as you can and share that message, that's the purpose of this podcast as well. And I'm really grateful for you being here today and sharing this message because I feel like it's very important, because I feel like we all deserve to live our truth and our purpose and feel good about what we are doing.
Yeah, and I think
And
the
feel
world would be
aligned.
a much better place
Yeah.
if the more people that are doing that. There's a lot of not so great stuff happening in the world at the moment. And I think the more that people can discover and align to what they were really here to do, the better the world will become for everyone. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Less frustrated people.
Yeah, absolutely.
thank, thank you so much for being here today. It was really a pleasure to talking to you.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Daniela. I'm so glad that we were able to do this.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kathryn. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please consider subscribing and leaving your feedback. And don't forget to check out Kathryn's resources linked down below. Until next time, sending you so much love and light.